Just tweeting about it so that people can come and watch. Think hi everybody. All two of you. How are you? I'm just tweeting out. Hi friends, how are you? I'm fabulous. Thank you for asking. Today I wanted to talk about more broad, I suppose more broad topic about modes. And modes was something that really were kind of confusing for me when I first started learning music. At high school, we talked about modes as part of our kind of music theory stuff. Synthetic snake. It reminds me, I just watched this video the other day of a tiny snake, and the lady boops it on the nose, and it like sinks back into the sand because he booped it. It was really cute. Anyway, so modes and kind of how different scales can have different sounds depending on where you start them from, and the different applications to various bits of harmony. It can get very deep, but the basic idea is that a mode is one scale, but starting from different places. So I'll talk about major scale, what is referred to as a major scale. Now, it's a bit of a misnomer, the major scale or minor scale, because technically there are a bunch of different major scales and a bunch of different minor scales. So, Chai. Sorry, the dog barks. So you can have scales that are major and are bright, and you can have scales which are minor and are kind of dark, and you kind of have this range of bright scale to dark scale. So the brightest being Lydian, it's the brightest sounding scale, and the darkest being Locrian, is the darkest sounding scale. And the brightness kind of comes from having more sharp notes and more flat notes, being the darker one. Okay, so that's kind of where it's at now. How does it relate to practically to scales? So the quote unquote the major scale is what we call Ionian. So C Ionian is C major. C D, guitar's being weird. C D E F G A B C. The things inside my guitar aren't working. So that would be C major, C Ionian, technically. So it's scale, and it's but it's technically called C Ionian. So it's again C D E F G A. Sorry, C D E F G A B C. Now, if we take that scale and start it from each of the different degrees in that scale, so start from the D, start from the E, start from the F, start from the G, etc., etc., we get different sounding scales, and they give us different qualities of sound, and they are as thus. Okay, so if we have C like this, we start it from the D instead, we get what is called D Dorian, and it's a minor scale. Oh, sorry. So D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D. D Dorian. Now, there are a couple of ways that you can think about this. This is the thing: is modes can be thought about a couple of different ways. You can think about them in relation to other scales. In this case, we're relating C major and starting it from a different degree, and that gets us a certain scale. Or you can think about it as, you know, like a certain scale, but with alterations to that scale. So D Dorian yes, is C major starting from the second degree, but it's also a D major scale, but with a flattened third and a flattened seventh. So D major, D Ionian, is D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. And if we flatten the third and flatten the seventh of that scale, so instead of playing F sharp, we play F natural, and instead of playing C sharp, we play C natural. It's getting really annoying. We get a D Dorian scale. So now we've got D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, which happens to just be the same notes as a C major scale, starting on the second. Crazy, I know, and it can be difficult to wrap your head around, but those are the two different ways that you can think about these scales. Again, you can either think about it as a certain scale starting from a different degree, so C major but starting from the second, or C major starting from the fifth, or whatever, or you can think about it as a certain scale with certain alterations to it. So you can be a D major scale with a flattened third and a flattened seventh, or it can be a G major scale with a flattened seventh, or whatever. And so there are different ways, kind of quote unquote formulas, that you can use to get each of these different modes. So the Dorian formula is flattened third and flattened seventh. So you can take any major scale, A flat major, A flat, B flat, C, D flat, E flat, F, G, A flat. Take that, flatten the third, flatten the seventh. So instead of a C natural, we have a C flat. And instead of G natural, we have a G flat. Now we have A flat Dorian. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. A flat Dorian. And consequently, it's also G flat major, but starting from the second, which is A flat. So there's the two different ways that you can think about it. Okay, so that's D Dorian. Now, D Dorian is a very important scale in jazz music. When a lot of jazz tunes, I talked about this yesterday as well, a lot of jazz tunes, the movement of the chords goes in leaps of fourths or fifths, right? So in its that's what we would call a 2-5-1 progression. 2-5-1, and that happens a lot of times in jazz. Like just heaps and heaps of jazz music is going to be 2-5-1s. So getting scales under your fingers that are gonna you're going to be able to play over those is kind of important. So for example, if we're in C major like we were, so we're in C major, a 2-5-1 in C major is going to be D minor, which is the 2 of C, C, D, D minor chord, the 5, which is G, C, D, E, F, G, G7, and that resolves to C, 1. Yeah. So, and like I said, the D Dorian scale is the scale that's going to be associated with the second mode of, the two chords. So the D minor is, you're going to be using a D Dorian scale. The ancient Greek names of the modes are different from the modern ones, and it's confusing. What do you mean? Do you mean like Dorian, Locrian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, those ones? Because those are the ones that I've learned. I think the names are less important than the actual application of the things, though. So getting that that the 2 scale is the scale that you're going to use over the good thing and the tricky thing about it is that they also in this C major 2-5-1, they're all quote unquote C major because they've all got exactly the same notes. D Dorian has the same notes as G Mixolydian, which has the same notes as C Ionian. So that's good because you only need to learn one scale. If you've learned C major and learned it in all the positions, Oh, sorry. So you've got all that, C major, yeah. The tricky part is not falling into a trap of kind of just blanket scaling things, just playing C major over the top of the whole thing. You've got to get the different sounds of each of those scales. You've kind of got to and that comes with knowing the chords, knowing the right notes to play over those chords, the chord tones, which are the thirds and the sevenths, which really are important, the defining notes of those chords, and aiming for those when you're playing. And then also, there's a bunch of other things that you can do over 5 chords and 2 chords and things like that, arpeggios and different what do you call it? Different thing. You can play like I talked about this yesterday, a whole bunch of different things over top of a 5 chord to really introduce tensions and whatnot to create a tension that then resolves back to the one. Anyway, beside the point. So let's look through these modes again. So we've got D minor, D Dorian, which is a minor scale, and is what we use over the 2, like a D minor 7, and that's D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D. The notes of a C major scale, but also a D major scale with a flattened third and a flattened seventh. So you should learn those scales across your whole instrument with different patterns and different times and all that sort of stuff to get them really under your fingers. There's some nice patterns that you can use, which I'll talk about in a second. But you will notice, like I said, if rather than just it being C major, if you listen to the scale itself, really get the sound of the scale in your head, how it differs from a C major scale, because your phrasing is going to be different because you're starting on different notes. So if we're talking about C major like that, it's got that certain sound to it. And now if you can do something like singing that root note, dum, and then playing the scale, you can hear how each of those notes sound with that. Now if you sing the same with the D, do, and then play the scale again, do, you can hear how it's different. Yes, they're the same notes, but the phrasing is different. The notes that you're putting on beats and down beats and stuff like that are different. And if you get used to those sounds against that D note, that's good. There's a really good app that you should, if you're going to be learning this stuff, called iRealB, I believe it is, and it has things that you can. It'll just play, bars and bars and bars of just one chord or 2 chords or whatever like that. So if you have it just playing a D minor chord over and over and over again, and just get used to each of those notes, how they sound against that. That's going to really get the sound of Dorian into your head. Okay, so next most important scale in jazz music would be the Mixolydian scale. So the Mixolydian scale, like I say, is from the 5th of a major scale. So if we're talking about C major again, C Ionian, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. But if we start that from the 5, which in this case is G, C, D, E, F, G. We get that? Sorry, I talk about numbers a lot in this as well. It's good to get in your head the kind of function of numbers, how they relate to the scales, and how each of the scales and notes and chords and things like that can be written out as numbers as of function, like functionally, rather than specific keys, so that when you're talking about a song or a scale or whatever, you can talk about it in a broader sense, as in like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7. You can talk about that, and then if you're thinking about things that way, you can then apply that to to any key, rather than being restricted to just going, okay, well, I know what C. if you know what C Ionian is, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, sorry, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, you know, you just know C Ionian. But if you know that it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, no alterations, you can apply that to any key. And the same with, you know, if you know that Dorian is flat 3 and flat 7, you can apply that to any key, and it's I think it's a lot more. And then the same comes with chords. Like if you know that a certain song is the chord progression goes 6, 2, 5, 1, rather than A minor, D minor, G, C, rather than that, you can apply that to any key. And then when it comes to playing a song, you know, maybe you need to change the key for whatever reason, like the singer needs to go up or down, you can do that. So like if you need to play There Will Never Be Another You, but you need to play it in the key of D flat, I mean, I know that it's 1 and then it's 7, 7, 3 to 6, and then 2, 5 into the 4. So I'd go, so I need to play it in D flat, so I play 1, 2, 5 into the 6, and then 2, 5 into the 4. So I can, you know, so knowing that abstract is kind of an important thing to do, and that comes. Anyway, so the 5 chord, the Mixolydian scale, is C major, but starting from the 5, starting from the 5th degree of the scale. So that would be G, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, dominant 7. A very important sound in jazz music, and indeed in most music, because it creates that tension which leads to a nice resolution, and you can hear that resolution. You can hear where it needs to go. So that's another important sound to get into your head. Oh, sorry. If I can play it properly. And again, it's a C major scale starting from the 5th degree, or it's a G major scale, a G Ionian scale, but with a flattened 7th. G, A, B, C, D, E. G Ionian normally has a F sharp, sounds like this. Da, 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 dee, da. G Mixolydian has a flat 7th. That's the only alteration to the scale. Da, do, 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 dee, 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 dee. And it's that flattened 7th which creates the the tension. I do suck at playing guitar. The Mixolydian. So this has a really good application. So it's going to be the scale that you use over a dominant 7th chord in any kind of given sense. It's a less it's got less tension in it than some other dominant 7th sounding scales, but it's still very much a scale which is going to be important for you to get the sound of. And again, you want to do this kind of thing where you getting that sound inside your head, hearing each of those notes, because each of those individual notes are going to have feeling in a different sound over top of that sound there. And if you can sing it as well, getting that sound in your head is really important. And I talk about this a lot when I'm talking about jazz music and indeed a lot of these things is really it's important to learn them on the instrument. You know, learning all the fingering and all that sort of stuff, but also getting the sound of the things in your head, because essentially what you're doing when you're improvising music is you're translating what's inside your head, the sounds, the music that is inside your head. I know it sounds very airy-fairy, but the music, the sound that is inside your head, and you're translating it onto the instrument. You're letting the instrument play it out, you know. So when I'm improvising or whatever, I'm not thinking about anything. I'm just letting the music kind of come out, and that comes from having that sound and everything cemented inside your head. Okay, so we've got those 3 scales: D Dorian, G Mixolydian, and then C Ionian. Those three scales, all the same notes, all exactly the same notes, but starting from different places, and different notes within those are going to be stressed. Like, for example, if we look at, if you take just a 4/4 bar, you know, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and you play each of those scales starting on the beat, different notes are going to fall on the main beats, and different notes are going to fall on the off beats. So the main beats being the 1, the 2, the 3, and the 4. Those are the down beats. Those are the notes that are going to be stressed, and the beats that are on the upbeat are going to be not stressed. So if we take a C, the notes that are going to be stressed are C, E, G, B. So those notes are the ones that are going to stick out and kind of define the sound of where you're at. With the D Dorian, you're going to have D, F, D, F, A, C are the ones that are going to kind of fall onto the beats. And then with the G, you've got G, B, D, F, that are kind of, so yes, they're all the same notes, but the notes that are stressed and that kind of define the sound of where you are very much dictated by where you kind of start. So you've got to change the way that you kind of think about each of the scales, rather than just thinking about it as C major. You've got to think about it as D, and that's going to come with you doing this kind of thing, going do, do. So, and hearing each of those notes, and obviously, I mean, you can just play each of them long and listen. Do, do. And listen to each of those notes, how they sound. You can do the same with the piano as well. If you get a piano, play a G and then play each of the other notes and just really listen to how they sound. Okay, so those that's three modes. Now, I was asked a question about pentatonic scales, and so pentatonic scales, and essentially it's kind of a similar thing. They have this relationship where you have a major pentatonic and a minor pentatonic that are the same notes, but just again depending on where you start. So, for example, A minor pentatonic, which is the first pentatonic that all guitarists learn. A minor pentatonic, except not with that. For your blues stuff, that A minor pentatonic is exactly the same as a C major pentatonic. For the same reason that, you know, these modes are the same notes, but they give different sounds because you're starting from a different place. So an A minor pentatonic is A, C, D, E, G, and a C major pentatonic is exactly the same as that, but starting from the C rather than from the A. Starting from the C, it started A. Anyway, C, D, E, F. C, D, E, G, A. So that's kind of how that works. There are other pentatonics and stuff, and so the pentatonics can obviously give you different sound as well. And depending on how you play them and use them with different chords and things, you're going to have different sounds. Okay, more modes. So there are going to be 7 different modes within the C major scale, right? So, and some of them you're going to use more or less depending on what sort of music you're playing. Those 3 are going to be the most used ones that you're going to use in jazz music a lot. The next, I suppose, would be Aeolian. Now, Aeolian is what we would conventionally call, quote unquote, the minor scale. It's the you have this relationship. What do they call it in classical music? Relative minor. Yeah. So C major, the relative minor of C major is A minor, and that's the Aeolian sound. So it's a C major, but starting from the A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I can say the alphabet: A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So it gives you an A minor 6, but flat 6 sound. It's It's an odd. I have to admit I don't really use Aeolian that much. Actually, maybe I do. I do lie. There's obviously a distinction between Dorian and Aeolian, them both being minor scales. They both, the thing that kind of defines whether it's a minor scale or not is the third, because if the third is natural, it's going to be a major scale because it gives that major sound. If it's flattened, then it's going to be a minor sound. You can hear that difference, right? Now, within our 7 different modes of the major scale, there are multiple minor scales. The Dorian is minor, the Phrygian is minor, the Aeolian is minor, the Locrian is minor. Have I missed one? Yeah, so I think there's 4 of them. Yeah, that's right. And then there's 3 major scales. The Mixolydian, the Ionian, and the Lydian are all major because they all have a major third and they sound major. They sound happy. They sound bright. The minor scales sound dark. They get darker and darker and darker until you get Locrian, which is that kind of sound. Yeah, Locrian is an interesting scale, but I'll get to that in a minute. So Aeolian and Dorian have that connection of being both minor scales, but the Dorian has a natural 6 and the Aeolian has a flattened 6. So if we think about D Aeolian, now there's 2 ways that we can get D Aeolian. We can find the major key for which D is the 6th of. In this case, that's F. So we have F major, F Ionian, and D is the 6th of that. So we play F Ionian starting from a D. So in that case, we have D, E, F, G, A, B flat, C, D. So, D Aeolian. Then, but the other way that we can do it is using, so from that we can kind of figure out what the formula of that scale is, right? So we have D, E, F, G, A, B flat, C, D. How does that relate to a D major scale? It's got a flattened 3rd, it's got a flattened 7th, and it's got a flattened 6th. So it's got 3 alterations as opposed to the 2 from Dorian. So Dorian was flat 3 and flat 7. Aeolian is flat 3, flat 7, and flat 6. So it's got that 1 more alteration, which makes it a little bit darker than the slightly brighter Dorian. So Dorian sounds like this. Aeolian sounds like this. And that distinction also comes up when we talk about melodic minor and harmonic minor. Melodic minor is a Dorian, but with a major 7. And harmonic minor is an Aeolian, but with a major 7. So if we just play those same scales but have a major 7 as well, you'll hear the difference. So this would be melodic minor, and this would be harmonic minor. And you can see just one note, just one little change of note, just changes the whole vibe of the scale. So that's such a more like a darker, bitier sound, the harmonic minor, as opposed to that melodic minor. Anyway, so yeah, so now we have Dorian, Aeolian, Mixolydian, and Ionian, right? So and those again, all the same notes. If we're talking about C major, we've got A Ionian, A Aeolian, D Dorian, G Mixolydian, and C Ionian. All exactly the same notes. All exactly the same notes, but with very distinct different sounds. Now, again, you can do the same thing with this A. And it's handy on guitar because you can just play an A note at the bottom there. There's a book called The Advancing Guitarist by a guy, I can't remember his name, but he was a teacher of Pat Metheny's, and it's a concept book, and it has a bunch of concepts and things that you can do to radically kind of change up, get you out of your comfort zone when playing, things like that. And one of the things it talks about is setting parameters for your practice and for your playing, so that you're forced to play in a certain way. So only playing on one string, or only playing on two strings, or only playing on three strings. So restricting yourself to learning scales just on the B string. Nice. I can't even do it. Improvising using just one string, because when you are restricted to a certain thing, when you've got that restriction, you have to adapt, and you come up with different things that you might not have thought of before when you're playing. I find this when I try and compose on the piano. When I'm composing on the piano, it's so different from the guitar, and I'm so limited on the piano because I suck at it. But I've written some tunes that I really like, because I've restricted myself to an instrument that I'm more restricted by, I suppose. But yeah, learning all your scales just on each of the individual strings can be a really powerful tool. That was a massive side track. What was I talking about? Okay, so we've got those 4 scales. Now they're going to work for, so something like Fly Me to the Moon. So Fly Me to the Moon starts on A minor. No, you're not too late, brother. I'm here for a little bit longer. D minor, G7, C. Damn this circuitry. Okay, so it's A minor, D. Sorry, my guitar's freaking out on me. G7, C. So it's all inside C major. But like I said, and in relation to these scales as well, they all have very distinct sounds. So the A minor is acting as the 6 of C major, so that's going to be our Aeolian chord, our Aeolian sound. A B C D E F G. So when this was something that I kind of got really confused about when I was first learning. You wouldn't really play an A Dorian on that A in the song because it's kind of out of key. I mean, you could, but it's kind of a different sound than what's actually going on there. So to begin with, you just play, for that whole thing, you can play C major. You just got to not fall into the trap of just blanket scaling the whole thing, because then you're not going to be outlining the changes and it's not going to sound like you know what you're doing. So if I was to play this tune devoid of any changes or anything like that, sorry, so you can hear in those lines, you can hear the tune, yeah? Fly me to the moon. You can hear that within those lines that I was playing, and that's because I'm outlining the chords in various different ways and really focusing on making sure that when I'm playing the notes, I'm not just absentmindedly playing in C major. I'm getting the sound of each of those scales and chords come through with each note that I play. I talked about yesterday bebop scale, so those can be really helpful as well to outline the different changes in these tunes. Anyway, beside the point. The point is that if you're looking at a tune and you're going like, okay, what scale? This is okay. So let's move on. What if I'm looking at a new tune and I need to decide what scales to use. You need to kind of analyze the tune and figure out what relation to the main key each chord is, right? And then you can, from that, you can extrapolate and get the right scale. So generally, you can look at a piece and just go, okay, well, it's in, I don't know, I'll bring up a chart and you can see, and you can go, oh, well, it's in G, so it's obviously in G, but and then you can figure it out from there. But like, okay, so if I look at this tune here, Ain't Misbehaving. We can't see that because it's way too fucking bright. How do I not do that? Can you kind of see that? It's very ambiguous. Anyway, I'll just tell you what they are. So the chords go C, A, D, G, C, C7, F, F minor. So it starts off in C. It starts off in C and goes to A, which, as we just figured out from Fly Me to the Moon, was the 6th. So we're going to use our Aeolian scale over there. The next is D, which is the 2 of C. And like I said at the beginning of this, you're going to be finding 2 5s all over the place. 2, 5, G, 7, back to C. And then what happens is it goes to a C7, which is outlining a transition to the 4, which is F. And that happens a lot in all sorts of music as well. It happened. I actually talk about this. This essay I'm doing about Bohemian Rhapsody, I talk about it on that because it does do that. Yeah, the F to F minor thing is fantastic as well. So in the tune Something by the Beatles, right? Starts off on C major, goes to C major 7, and then it goes to C dominant 7, and to F. So it like I say, it starts on the 1, and then just goes to the 1 again, and then it changes that 1 to a dominant 7th chord, which creates a tension that needs to be resolved to the 4 of the chord. And that happens so much in music as well. These are all very common techniques across Western music. So doing that, this is what happens in here. We've got the 1, and the 1 changes to a dominant 7, which signals a change to a different key, which in this case is the 4, which is F. And then it goes to F minor, which is just fantastic. A nice little what you call a minor plagal cadence. It's the 4, but it's minor, and it resolves back to the 1, to the 6, 2, 5, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1. Okay, so we're all basically in C major here, but there are a couple of ways that you can kind of outline the thing, because like I say, you could just be when you don't really hear the tune there. But if we play something like keeping in mind the chords, you've got to this is something that we did a lot at jazz school as well, is to cement those chords in your head as doing what you call change running. And it sounds really boring, and it is kind of boring, but it's a good thing to get the changes in your head, get the sound of the chord changes in your head, and can kind of be used when you're improvising as well. So you start by outlining each of the chords with arpeggios, or C, A minor, D minor, G7, C, C7, F, F minor. What was the next one? Yeah, and then C, A minor, D. So you get the sound of the whole thing in your head, and then you try to what's the word? Portray that in your lines. I wasn't strictly sticking to C major there, but I'll get onto that later. I mean, at this point, I just wanted to talk about the modes themselves. And you can get very bogged down in this mode and that mode, but I mean, it's important to get those sounds in your head. What am I playing this through? My roommate has this acoustic amp, and it sounds really nice. I don't know what it's called. I can't see it. It's getting dark. But that's it does sound really nice. Okay, so those are a bunch of modes of the major scale. So to recap, a mode is starting a scale from a different degree of that scale. It's going to give you a different sound. It's going to give you a different feel. And if you can use those different sounds to outline the changes that are happening in a piece, that's a good start. A good start. Getting used to playing through a 2-5-1 sound. And if you can introduce those bebop scales as well. Yeah, so that as well, and then from those sorry, I should from those modes as well, you can also create these arpeggios, which are also very helpful to outlining the changes. And the arpeggios, you know, can obviously come from the chords as well, but you can create an arpeggio from each of those scales, and it's going to give you the notes that outline those chords. So for D Dorian, if you take the arpeggio being the 1, the 3, the 5, and the 7, that gives you D minor 7, D, F, A, C. And if you can practice those arpeggios as well, you can use those really effectively to outline those changes. Same with G. So if you've got G Mixolydian, G A B C D E F G, do that, but create the arpeggio 1, 3, 5, and 7. 1, 3, 5, 7. That gives you your G7 arpeggio. And those can be very very obviously effective for outlining those changes. Yeah, so ways to practice your scales and your arpeggios, patterns. So doing there's a couple I like to do, which are like
how long are you doing
I'm
for?
I'll probably be finishing in like 15 minutes.
Okay.
Could you crank on a light, please?
Sure.
It's slowly gotten darker. Thanks. So there are a couple that I like to do, which is, I mean, that you can apply the concept in general as well. You know, a grouping of a certain amount of notes. So say that was grouping of 4 notes, and then you it's Matt. I basically live with Matt now. We're kind of housemates. He's dating my housemate, which is really cool. Anyway, so yeah, picking the grouping of notes, and then picking the rhythmical thing that you're going to do. So in this case, semiquavers, or quarter notes, and groups of 4. So playing group of 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then going to the next note, and then playing 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then going to the next note and playing 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then go to the next note and playing 4, and just doing that through the thing. So you're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, and then you do it backwards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. So that would be a basic pattern, right? So you can, like I say, you can take that concept and run with it. Choose 3 notes, and triplets. That's another one. So that's grouping of 3 with the rhythmic grouping of triplets. And like I say, you can take it and run with it. You could do groups of 5 and triplets. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Obviously, I haven't practiced that, but you get the idea. One that's kind of cool is like groups of 4, but with 3, and you get this kind of hemiola effect. Yeah, and the same the other way around. You can do groupings of 3, but with a 4. And again, like I say, it gets that hemiolar effect. Because each note is the emphasis is being you know, moved around by groups of 3 every time. So that's kind of a cool thing to do. So that's a good way. Well, bright. And the Lord said, "Let there be light." So that's a good way to do that. And you can do that to all your scales, your G. And so, you know, obviously you can use that stuff when you're playing, but it's also a great way to just learn the scale and get it underneath your fingers. And doing that across the whole neck of the guitar. So, or, you know, the whole range of your instrument. Sorry. Or something, you know. So I mean, obviously there's a lot of work and a lot of things to keep in mind, but good things to do. So do that. What else is there to talk about there? It's pretty much it, really. That's all you'll ever need to know about modes ever. Thanks very much. I did it in 45 minutes. I'm going to play a little bit again, if I can find my speaker. Wherever I put it. Oh, there it is. Here's my crotch. And that'll be it. If you have a musical concept or a song, you know, it doesn't have to be jazz or anything that you want me to discuss or teach or anything, please leave a comment, and I will endeavor to teach you those things. Like I said, it doesn't have to be jazz. I'm just kind of on a jazz vibe at the moment, but I very much like playing blues and rock music and all that sort of stuff as well. So I can talk about those things too, if you would like. So if you would like to do that, please leave a comment, or you know, write it in the chat now if you're watching. Also, I have a Patreon and various other things which are in the description. So go ahead and follow me on various social medias, and if you feel like supporting my work, then go ahead and do that. I'm just going to play some jazz now. This is all the things you are. I hope you enjoy that. I hope you learned something today, and I will talk to you all soon. Is it going to make music? Is it going to make sounds? Yay! Playing guitar is the best. Classic standard backing track. 220 beats per minute. Jazz. Hey, thanks for tuning in. I'll do this again at some point. I've now done it for the past 3 days, but I don't know if I'll do it again tomorrow. We'll see. I actually did want to look at teaching this Jeff Buckley song that I really like, but I really should finish writing my damn essay about Bohemian Rhapsody. It's a mammoth, I'll tell you. Anyway, thanks for joining in. I'll see you all again soon. Much love.